How to start developing your psychic sense. Let's break it down, make it simple, and give some practical ways to start developing this natural gift that we all have. Generally, in the past, when I've looked up information on becoming more psychic, which just means that I'm able to read people a bit better, or situations or events, without necessarily having to go and talk to that person, for example. And we all do this plenty of times, even when we have situations where we walk into a room, something feels off. It's basically us picking up on information that we don't see necessarily physically. And I personally have friends that are psychic to a degree where it's almost like they're living in your head, able to read almost exactly what's going on with you, about you, or with certain situations and events, and like instantly as well. However, with me, I had to develop from the beginning, and where I'm at with it is I've got it to a nice degree to where I use it to assist others in my sessions, as well as just in my personal life as well, like when it comes to decisions or relationships and things like that. It comes in very, very handy. And in sessions, we shortcut a lot of the process of finding the core of a problem. And sometimes even before a session, I might just tune in to see, okay, where is the direction of this session going? And the first place we need to start off with developing your psychic sense is your mindset around it. This will be the key. Like, there's no point even moving further on unless we get the mindset right. And there's two parts to this, and we're starting off with intention. Your intention for wanting to develop this ability or skill of yours will play a big role in how fast and how good you become at it. Are you wanting to develop this to help another person, or to show off, or maybe even take advantage of someone? Even if you want to use it for the wrong uses, you will still be able to develop it to a degree. However, as we've seen with so many stories from the past, that thing that you use against others ends up becoming a downfall in some way. And it definitely won't be as easy as if you had good intention or use for why you want to develop this sense. And your guides actually play a lot into this role also, when it comes to your soul as well, and these higher aspects of yourself that have a better point of view of what you actually need. For example, with me, although I was interested in developing a psychic sense, it was never a thing where I felt like I have to directly go and learn this, because it didn't feel like it would serve me. And I'm glad that I didn't go that way, because I knew that, looking back in hindsight, if I went down this direction of gaining this ability in particular, it would have hindered my progress into, you could say, the more important goal of self-realization. Similarly, it may be the case for you that maybe this is a skill that may not be suitable right now, or may not be the most important thing right now. So if it seems like it's taking a while, don't blame yourself, or don't get frustrated, because as I just went with what I was guided to do, I found that, hey, naturally I ended up developing a level of psychic ability to a degree that I need it also. It's like I don't really need to be able to read someone at this moment in time to the degree that some of my peers can. However, not to say I wouldn't develop it over time, but it's just happening as a byproduct of my meditation practice and focusing on what's actually important, rather than me focusing on the skill in particular. Then the other side to the mindset is your belief. This by far will be the biggest hindrance in your practice. It's better to, even before starting a practice, to develop this, to address this part, which is your belief. The first thing we need to understand that this is a very simple skill, and we need to accept that there's no big deal about it. It's something that we all can do. When we think of it as such a rare skill, such an important thing, and we increase the importance of it, it just makes it seem like something that's not part of our reality. This is like manifestation 101. When you accept it as a normality, as a thing that, hey, we all can do this, and there's no big deal, even if I just read someone for the first time. Yeah, it's something that's normal, I can do this. I'm just learning how to do it. It's exactly like any other skill. It just takes a bit of practice and a bit of learning. And when we discuss a bit further in the video, you'll see that the actual, you could say, mechanics of it is very simple also. And then the second one is, of course, doubt. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. If you doubt, you can't read someone, you can't gain information about something psychically or intuitively, then that's gonna hinder you. That thought's gonna come in as you're trying to read or as you're trying to interpret something. Coming on to now more practical advice on developing this psychic skill. The first thing is to start with what's natural. Some people are more visual when they receive information. Some people hear things. Some people feel things. Some people just kind of know. Some people even smell things. And there's a few other versions of these, like clairs, that they call them: clairvoyance, seeing, clairsentience, feeling, clairaudience, hearing, claircognizance, knowing, and there's a few more others, but I would say those are the more common ones. For me personally, feeling and knowing were the two ways that I would get information. Like if I'm focusing on someone and trying to read someone, I straight away would feel a certain thing, and with that I'll like get information of it, or I'll just have these random like boom boom boom, like these things, these facts just pop in my mind, like, oh, this is what it is, this is what it is. So start off with what's natural. It'll be much easier to start off on your strengths and then go on to learning the other ways if you need to. Now, when it comes to developing your psychic sense, it's mainly about cutting out the noise. Whether we realize it or not, at some point, like I mentioned before, we've received information from our environment or from a person which was like non-physical, you could say. That this could be as simple as you feeling that someone is off and you haven't actually maybe even seen them, or the moment you've seen them, you may see them from afar and you just instantly know that, okay, this person's just feeling a bit off today, or even vice versa. And mother's intuition is probably another big obvious example of where this happens. The only thing is that we've not tried to differentiate something that we've observed physically, like a frown, versus something we've picked up from that person's energy field. And the radio example is like the perfect example to describe what's actually happening when you're reading someone psychically or something. And that is simply, all you're doing is you're tuning yourself or your third eye to a certain frequency, and when you tune to that frequency, you pick up what's on the other end, that radio station, for example. So you tune into a radio station, a frequency, and then you start to receive information. You start to allow information to come through. And that's just another important side note. You're not going to find information when you're psychically reading someone. You're just tuning your frequency to that thing or person, and then you're allowing that information to come to you. You're sitting there allowing information come to you rather than finding information out. And there's two main ways that we cut out this noise, and that firstly is focus and concentration. That's pretty obvious. It's like the most obvious way to develop your psychic sense is to develop your ability to focus and concentrate. We've got plenty of distractions with our thoughts, with our feelings, with the environment. And all of these things will end up interfering with our ability to pick up on what we're actually trying to pick up on. So developing your focus and attention, your ability to focus on a subject or one thing. With time, if you can focus long enough, you'll start to receive information on that thing. And there's a few ways you can develop your focus and attention. Meditation, in the sense of like a candle meditation, would be very helpful. Any meditation where you're focusing on something, and especially if you incorporate the third eye into it, or the pineal gland in some way, by focusing, for example, on a ball of light at your third eye center in the middle of your head. And an important note though is, if you incorporate the third eye meditation, make sure you're not forcing or you're not contracting anything. You should always be relaxed. You should never be tense. The moment you start forcing things is a moment that things that shouldn't happen for you may end up happening for you. Meaning this could affect you emotionally, psychologically. So make sure you're relaxed if you do incorporate the third eye, or in any of your meditation practice. Never force. There is also that aspect, like I mentioned before, of your guides, of your higher self, that knows what's right for you at the right time. That's why it's best to stay relaxed and open when practicing rather than forcing. And if you're in any doubt, make sure you seek the guidance of a teacher or a guide, because they'll be able to tell you if you're getting a bit unbalanced in incorporating this type of meditation, or if you need to ground or do something else. So focus and concentration, this ability to say bye-bye to all the distractions and concentrate. Even in the eight limbs of yoga, I think it's like the 6th or 7th limb, where it focuses on firstly concentration, and then you end up becoming one with that object of focus. Now when you enter that meditative state, that's when the information really starts pouring in. So focus and concentration, it will take a bit of time. You don't need to be the best, like you don't need to have such strong concentration that you break glass with it. You just need to be able to concentrate for long enough so that you can start receiving information from the other end. The second way that we can develop and increase and improve our psychic ability is purification and healing. And this is more so how I ended up becoming better at it, which was through healing, whether that be trauma healing, emotional healing, whatever blocks you have, energy work. In a sense, what's happening is you're purifying your energy and your energy field, so you become more of a clear mirror as to reflect the object of focus. It's much easier to read when you're clear yourself and you're very familiar with your energy and what it feels like. Then it's much easier to discern what may be your own thoughts or feelings and what is another's thoughts and feelings. However, if you've got a lot of things going on in your field, a lot of emotions you're holding on to, a lot of thoughts, then they will end up offering as distractions. And a lot of the times with our thoughts are a manifestation of certain healing, things that need healing, certain emotions that are stored in the body. So just by emotionally healing and purifying, which I've got meditations for, my emotional healing bundle helps with that. It's like you automatically improve your focus and attention because you start to eliminate some of the distractions. And as a bonus, I have to mention the levels of consciousness here, because through that journey, for the journey up the levels of consciousness, I was automatically improving on both these 2 points that I mentioned. And a further benefit of it is that as you embody more of your true nature of awareness, of your natural self, you start to disentangle yourself more and more from thoughts, from the mind, from feelings. And because you're able to be disentangled and in this, you could say, neutral space, in this open space, it's much easier to pick up on information when you're focusing on a subject that you're trying to read. And if we speak dimensionally, a lot of these psychic things, when we talk about telepathy and reading, it happens on the astral level, the astral plane. And as you go up the levels of consciousness, you go from gaining access to the astral to the causal and even higher up. So as you go up and gain access to these larger, more open consciousness, which is just yourself, you transcend a lot of the limitations of what's below, which automatically just help with your reading ability. Now a little cheat code for you, which I got from a psychic called Jenny Lee that teaches other people how to tap into their psychic ability, is your right brain. Your right brain is the one that's usually linked to your intuitive ability, your creative ability, your spiritual ability. It's the non-logical side of you. Whereas the left brain, that needs a lot of observation, knowledge. It works on things of the past. And a lot of the fears and stuff that you get and the doubts usually tend to come from this side of things, because it's more based on logical things, or real world things, you could say. So a little cheat code you can use is by shifting your attention and focus, so as it's like you're on the right side of your brain, and then just allowing the information to come through. And it's very important that when you're trying to read, that you don't analyze what you're reading until after you've finished reading. You can jot things down, or you can take mental note, but don't bring in the left brain, the analytical brain, to analyze what it is that you're receiving, even if the information seems ridiculous, because we can receive information in many ways. We can receive information in metaphors, we can receive information in images, things that don't necessarily make sense if you shared it with someone else, but they make sense to you based on your experiences and what you know and how your mind is. So always be open, don't analyze until afterwards. And you'll often find that when there's certain doubt or fear involved as you're reading, that's probably your left brain coming in, your own thoughts. Whereas the right side is often light, feels instant, feels like a knowing, like not something you need to prove, it's just something you know. And there's usually no strong emotional connection, there's no strong emotional attachment with what you're receiving. And this is a big part of the learning process, is learning to taste the difference between what you've received psychically, or what you've read, which is from the subject you've been observing and concentrating on, versus what's just your own normal thoughts, what things, you may know the thing or the person you're reading, so your own beliefs may jump in. And it's basically a method of a journey of trial and error, learning to taste the difference. And like I mentioned, the difference usually tends to be that what comes in intuitively and psychically is instant in the most cases. It doesn't have any strong emotional involvement with it. It usually just feels neutral, light, clear. So these are some of the signs to look out for. And a little pro tip is, overall it would be easier to start with people or things that you're familiar with, because you're already familiar with that energy, with that field, with that frequency, and you've probably already received information just because you interact with that frequency frequently. Little tongue twister there. So if you start by reading people or things that you're familiar with, it will be much easier, and it'll probably expedite this process a bit faster of learning what's a psychic thought and what's a normal thought. So that's it. That's my personal guidance of how you can increase your psychic ability, develop this ability, which helps you in many ways. It helps in life, in decision making, helps with relationships because you're able to understand people better. And overall, it's just a natural ability that we all have access to. And so just to summarize, intention is the most important thing. Why do you want to learn this ability? And is it necessary for you right now? Maybe you don't need to be able to read someone to such a big degree. Maybe you just need a bit of intuitive ability when it comes to your psychic sense. And then belief is also important, knowing that this is a very simple skill, and like any other skill, just needs training, and to eliminate doubt, and don't allow that to interfere with your process. And then we start with what's natural. You may be more visually orientated, feeling orientated. You may hear things, you may just know things, smell things, or even something else that I haven't mentioned. And the main process is just to cut out the noise, because again, it's a natural ability. So really, we're just learning to cut out the noise and differentiate what's psychic information and what's just our thoughts. And we can do this by developing our focus and concentration, which you can do by meditations that require us to focus, for example, on a candle flame, on a ball of light in your third eye, and remembering not to force anything, to be relaxed as you do these meditations. And even in my stress-free living starter kit, I have a meditation called River of the Mind, which kind of teaches you how to withdraw yourself from the distraction of thoughts. Then we got Purification and Healing. If you're a clear mirror, it's much easier to read. When you don't have the mess in your field and you get to know your energy, it's much easier to know what's yours and what you're receiving from the outside. And as a bonus, the levels of consciousness do hit both of these points if you decide to embark on that journey. And a cheat code is to use the right side of your brain, shift your attention to the right side, and allow the information to come in. Don't analyze it as it's coming in, just allow it to come in and then analyze it afterwards. And mainly, it's about learning the taste, trial and error. I know I mentioned focus and attention and concentration, but if you really are tuned to the taste of psychic information and what you're receiving versus your own thoughts, you can just be very casually be able to read people. And a pro tip is to just start with what's familiar. An energy frequency that you're familiar with is much easier to read than a new one. Just be mindful of putting away any beliefs and things that you know about that person or thing that you're reading aside as you're reading it. And as always, it's a natural thing that we can all do, and make sure that you use this ability wisely. And if you haven't already and you found some of this information useful, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.